The deadliest Viking leaders who ever lived. Imagine a warlord too crippled to stand, commanding an army that burns half of England to ash. Imagine a king who fakes his own funeral just to butcher a city from inside his coffin. These were not raiders chasing loot. They were the men who made kings pay silver just to keep their capitals standing, who turned rivers into invasion routes and thrones into blood debts. Today we rank the 8 deadliest Viking leaders who ever lived. The men history remembers not for what they built, but for what they destroyed. Stay until the end, because the final name on this list marks the exact moment the Viking Age died forever. Number 8. Ragnar Lothbrok. Long before Vikings became legend, one name stood above the rest: Ragnar Lothbrok. His raids on England and France were brutal, but his real weapon was fear itself. In 845, he sailed his fleet straight to Paris and laid siege to the city walls. The Franks paid him a massive ransom in silver just to make him leave, one of the first recorded cases of a European kingdom paying a Viking off instead of fighting him. Ragnar also mastered psychological terror, famously hanging the bodies of captured monks along the riverbanks to break enemy morale before a single sword was drawn. His downfall came at the hands of King Ella of Northumbria, who, according to Norse saga, captured Ragnar and threw him into a pit of venomous snakes. As he died, Ragnar is said to have warned that his sons would avenge him. They did, unleashing one of the bloodiest invasions England had ever seen. Ragnar earned his place at number 8 because his legend, true or exaggerated, became the blueprint that every Viking after him tried to follow. But his own sons were about to prove that his blood ran even colder than his. Number 7. Ivar the Boneless. Ragnar's sons did not forget his death, and none of them were more dangerous than Ivar the Boneless. Sagas describe Ivar as suffering from a condition that left him unable to walk, yet he became one of the most feared military minds of the Viking Age. In 865, Ivar led the Great Heathen Army, a massive coalition of Norse warriors, in an invasion of England unlike anything seen before. He captured King Edmund of East Anglia in 869 and had him executed, tied to a tree and shot full of arrows until he died. A killing so brutal, it turned Edmund into a martyr. Ivar went on to seize control of Dublin, extending Viking power deep into Ireland. He could not swing a sword like other warriors, but he did not need to. His mind planned the sieges, the ambushes, and the political executions that crushed entire kingdoms. Ivar proved that a man who could not stand could still bring nations to their knees, and that made him one of the most terrifying commanders the Vikings ever produced. Yet while Ivar ruled through fear at home, his brother took Viking violence somewhere no one saw coming. Number 6. Bjorn Ironside. While Ivar tore through England, another son of Ragnar carried Viking terror somewhere no one expected: the heart of the Mediterranean. Bjorn Ironside led his fleet past Gibraltar and into waters the Norse had never touched, raiding the coasts of France, Italy, and North Africa. His most infamous moment came at the walled Italian city of Luna. Believing they had reached Rome itself, Bjorn's men could not breach the city's defenses, so he faked his own death. He convinced the city's bishop to allow a Christian burial inside the walls, then burst from his coffin during the funeral and sacked the city from within. It was equal parts warfare and theater. Bjorn eventually returned home to rule as King of Sweden, but his legacy was built on the sea, not the throne. He proved that Viking violence could reach further than anyone imagined, all the way to the shores of the Roman world itself. Number 5. Eric Bloodaxe. Some Vikings earned their reputation fighting foreign kings. Eric Bloodaxe earned his by killing his own family. Born the son of Harald Fairhair, the man who first united Norway, Erik wanted the throne for himself, and he took it the only way he knew how, by killing most of his brothers one by one. His own people eventually turned on him for his cruelty, driving him into exile. But Erik did not disappear. He sailed to England and seized the throne of Northumbria, ruling from the city of York, not once, but twice. He governed through fear rather than loyalty, and the people of Northumbria eventually grew tired of living under a king who ruled with an axe instead of a plan. In 954, Erik was betrayed and ambushed near Stainmore, dying surrounded and outnumbered in the same violent fashion he had lived. Erik Bloodaxe remains one of history's clearest examples of a man who could conquer a crown, but never learned how to keep one. The next Viking on this list learned from that mistake and turned conquest into something far more permanent. Number 4. Svein Forkbeard. Most Vikings raided for silver. Svein Forkbeard raided for a throne, and he got it. As King of Denmark, Svein launched a series of devastating invasions of England throughout the 990s and early thousands, forcing the English king, Ethelred the Unready, to pay enormous sums of Danegeld just to buy peace. It was never enough. In 1013, Svein returned with a full invasion force and did something no Viking had ever managed before. He conquered all of England. City after city surrendered without a fight, and Ethelred fled the country in humiliation. For the first time, a Viking king sat on the English throne. Svein's reign lasted only a few weeks before his sudden death in 1014, but the damage was permanent. He had proven that Viking power was no longer limited to raiding coastlines. It could now topple entire kingdoms outright, and no one in England would ever feel safe from a Viking fleet on the horizon again. His son would soon take that lesson even further. Number 3. Canute the Great. Svein's son inherited his father's ambition and turned it into an empire. Canute the Great fought a brutal war to reclaim the English throne his father had briefly held, defeating King Edmund Ironside in a series of vicious battles before the two agreed to split the kingdom between them. When Edmund died weeks later, Canute took all of England for himself. He secured his power the way most Viking kings did, through fear. Rival claimants were exiled or killed, and English nobles who resisted him were purged without mercy. But Canute was not just a conqueror, he was a builder. He went on to rule Denmark and Norway as well, creating a single North Sea empire that stretched across 3 kingdoms, something no Viking leader before him had ever achieved. Canute proved that Viking violence, when paired with real statecraft, could build something that outlasted the man who created it. But even an empire could not compare to what one man was willing to trade for peace. Number 2. Rollo of Normandy. Not every Viking conqueror needed a crown to change history. Rollo terrorized the Seine River Valley for years, repeatedly besieging Paris and burning towns along the water's edge, exactly as Ragnar had done decades before him. But the King of France, Charles the Simple, tried something different. Instead of fighting Rollo to the death, he offered him a deal. In 911, the two men signed the Treaty of Saint-Clair-sur-Epte, granting Rollo an entire territory along the Seine in exchange for peace and protection from other raiders. That land became Normandy, meaning Land of the Northmen. Rollo converted to Christianity and ruled as its first duke, blending Viking ruthlessness with Frankish law. His bloodline did not stop there. Generations later, his descendant, William the Conqueror, would cross the English Channel in 1066 and conquer England itself. Rollo proved that sometimes the deadliest Viking weapon was not an axe, it was a treaty written in ink. But there was one Viking left who refused to believe the age of conquest was over, and his death would prove him wrong in the most violent way possible. Number 1. Harald Hardrada. And now we reach the final name, the man history calls the last great Viking. Harald Hardrada fought his first battle at only 15 years old, standing beside his half-brother at Stiklestad in 1030. When that battle was lost, Harald fled east into exile, eventually reaching Constantinople, where he joined the Byzantine Empire's elite Varangian Guard. For nearly a decade, he fought across the Mediterranean and North Africa, earning a fortune in gold and a reputation as one of the deadliest mercenaries alive. When he finally returned to Norway, he seized the throne in 1046 and ruled as a hardened, battle-forged king, determined to bring back the age of Viking conquest. In 1066, he launched his final invasion, sailing for England with a massive fleet, aiming to claim the English crown for himself. At the Battle of Stamford Bridge, an arrow tore through his throat, killing him instantly and ending his campaign within hours. His death did more than end one man's ambition. Historians mark that single arrow as the moment the Viking Age itself came to an end. Nearly 3 centuries of raids, conquests, and terror, closing with one king's final breath on an English battlefield.